is the latest standings, but these are attached with it, this graphic, are the odds of who is going to be in the college football championship or winning the championship. 1, TCU, recognized at number 4. Texas up to 18. Kansas State, of course, with that loss, they're down a little bit to 19. It's going to be so much fun because some teams are going to play each other. But Paul Catalina, break it down 1 through 4. Did they get it right?
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, TCU's played a better schedule than anybody but Georgia in that top 4. Honestly, I mean, Michigan might be able to, with them having Penn State on the, in the rear view and beat them pretty badly, might have an argument. But as far as TCU having to get into this because, of the preseason rankings and that, they're at 4. That's where they deserve to be, at least in the top 4. And I don't think the committee had a very hard job last night. I mean, where do you stash some of the 2-loss teams? What do you like? The bottom of the top 25 ultimately, like I said, is kind of done to make everything else look better. I'll just give you a personal example. FSU is in this thing for one reason, not because they beat Miami, who's a very bad team. FSU beat LSU, who beat Alabama, and now FSU looks better by extension, even though that was weeks ago. So all of a sudden they're in.
Well, I got to say, they've been playing well.
They beat
the living crap out of Florida.
They've got
Miami, excuse me.
I hope that one comes in a couple weeks. But 3, and you go through NC State's a loss that they could have, all those things. But they're in there. It props up the rest of their stuff because NC State and Clemson are both in that, and it moves them up a little bit. But the top 4 is. Really, they knew Georgia was going to be number 1 because they thumped Tennessee, who was the previous number 1.
Right.
You knew that Ohio State and Michigan were going to be 2 or 3, so then you just have to go down the line of splitting the hairs of, does Ohio State deserve to be 3rd because of a bad game against Northwestern? Because here's the other thing that makes Ohio State look good. Notre Dame now all of a sudden looks tougher down the stretch, and they played a tough game with them to kick off the season. So that's a better win now than it was 2 weeks ago for Ohio State, and that's how it changes in the committee's mind, even though that win really hasn't changed all that much, right? So,
okay, did Tennessee have a gripe to being 5 instead of in the top 4?
No, they're not undefeated. Everybody in the top 4 is undefeated.
Okay.
Those are the 4 undefeated teams. They've earned their way there. Now, at least one of those teams will not be undefeated 3 weeks from now when they do the final poll, because Ohio State and Michigan will cancel each other out. One will cancel. Well, they won't cancel each other out. One will cancel the other out of the top 4 of being undefeated. But at that point, it may not matter who wins that game because of, if one of them is knocked out of the Big Ten championship game and still sits there with 1 loss and things happen around them, they could wind up back in the playoff anyway because it's Ohio State and Michigan. Mm-hmm. So, TCU has a very easy task ahead of them. They just have to win out in the deepest conference in the country.
And if they do, that means they'll beat a team ranked right now at 18. That means they'll beat a team that could still be alive for a Big 12 title in Baylor, if they were. And then they would also, at the end of the year, take care of their business, which they should.
And if Baylor wins this week, they'll be at 20 to 25 range, you would think, in the BCS poll, just based on who they've beaten and what's gone on. And then if they beat TCU, then that changes. But if you beat Baylor, will be ranked probably at least low at the bottom when they play them.
Teams with the odds of winning it, Georgia minus 125 heavy favorite. And then if you look at it, there are only 13 of the 25 teams that have odds that they're going to win the national title, all the way down to where Utah is. And don't forget about them. They're still a part of this because of the Pac-12 with UCLA and USC. And, of course, Oregon and Utah has beaten USC. On the chat room today, thank you, Paxton, Scotty B, Jacob. Scotty B's all in it. Yes, today was also National Signing Day. Baylor got Walter and also Little. Baylor men's basketball signed a couple of elite players. A lot of people did. Ram FT1, 12-1 Oregon will get in the Pac-12 title. They will have earned what they get if they get in because of the remaining schedule. Oregon does have the win against the loss to Georgia, but other than that, they have looked impressive, including, didn't they maul UCLA? Mm-hmm. If you're UCLA at 12, USC's at 8. You kind of look at that, maybe who they've beaten compared to who USC's beaten. But again, it's just an argument. They're all going to play each other.
But you'll be able to, if you're UCLA, you'll be able to settle that here.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a week. Not this week, but next. So.
Clinton Moses, no, Craig the Dragon, I'm out. See you tomorrow.
Oh, no.
I told Paul and I told Craig, and that also included me, that with our high school football coverage that wound down a couple of weeks ago, although I'm still doing the podcast and covering it, that everybody, if they wanted to just take a deep breath day, so to speak. And so Craig picked today. So blame me for me giving him that opportunity. Paul will have his, and I'll have mine here in the next week or two. From Clinton Moses, again, he's the one that says that he's also the Beavers fan. Mike Bean and Todd We Trust, Todd Reese. Let's see, Scotty B, I agree on the top 7. Paxton, this should have been the first playoff rankings. Oh, this is what it should have been like last week. And again, Tennessee was involved in that because of the win against Alabama. Katie Rader, let's see. Happy Wednesday, everyone. From Patrick. Sorry I'm late. Reckham. Katie Rader. Me too. Good to have everybody who's a part of it right now on the chat room and also watching us on 365 Sports.
You know, it's weird where history and conference come into the thing, because if you just took TCU and Tennessee and they had the same records, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at who's been relevant more recently, it would be TCU. Because since the second to last, well, no, they were in the first BCS title game. Tennessee was, I believe, against Florida State. I think that was the first BCS game.
Okay, Nebraska and Michigan split in 97. 98 was
Tennessee and
FSU.
Yeah, so that was the first BCS game.
Yes.
So they were in the first BCS national championship game and won it. That was 24 years ago. TCU was just outside the top 4 a mere 9 years ago. But Tennessee is in the
Don't forget the year they were unbeaten and won the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It was before the playoff.
But in the playoff era, TCU has been in this discussion one time.
Actually, the first year was 99. Would have been 98, Tennessee, Florida State. Yep.
Yeah, so... And you know, it's funny that we're talking about this, because our guest at 3:30
had a lot to do with it.
Had a lot to do with it.
Very much involved in that Big 12 championship game to A&M. Yep.
But TCU has been more recently in discussion. But Tennessee, it's funny, if you're in the SEC and you haven't been in it in a long time, as soon as you're back in it again, it's like everybody forgot the last quarter century. I mean, they didn't go through 6 coaches, I think, maybe 7.
Yeah.
They didn't try to make their old coach the athletic director. They didn't have an NCAA scandal with 2 different coaches. They didn't have all these different things go on. It's just like, well, everything's working now. You know, and but that is good in that, at least for some teams, they will live in the now. But also, they've gotten credit for that last title.
We have seen, and we've been waiting for certain programs who were what are considered so-called blue blood teams to get their you-know-what together. In Tennessee, it's taken a long time. There's a few others out there that may never get it back that we see, and there's that would be a top 5 right there, the best blue bloods who have not been relevant for a long, long time. Texas this year, maybe they're sneaking back in. I'm not saying championship level, but maybe play for the Big 12 title and win it. Who knows? Nebraska, they're shot. USC's been kind of dormant, although a part of it. Miami is another one. And so, and Florida State seems like they got a pulse, and maybe more than a pulse of what they're doing. And I had to bring that up, or otherwise Paul would shun me for the rest of the show. Now, so those are the odds on the right-hand side. Good stuff right there, Garrett. Here it's called it's at CFP Resume Ranks. It is kind of a cross-check of the college football rankings. It's a Twitter feed. What we got right, LSU at 7 behind Oregon. TCU only having 1 top 25 win to date. Predicting the 5 3-loss teams in the top 25. Swap Mississippi State for Kentucky. Put that up again. Swap Mississippi State for Kentucky. Kentucky's like at 23, 24, whatever it is. And then again, you see them sneak in. Okay? And what, Mississippi State's right? No, Washington's right below them.
Yeah.
They actually put TCU ahead of Tennessee, and rightfully so. Clemson at 10 is lower than they should have been. I think that's about who are they going to get in front of? who would Clemson be in front of among the top 9 teams? In fact, there's an argument you may want to knock them down another notch or two, but again, they're down pretty much. They were in the top 4 now at number 10.
I think they're kind of lucky to be ahead of Ole Miss, to be honest with you. Because based on the only reason they should be ahead of LSU and Alabama is only because both those schools have 2 losses. So if you were just kind of rewarding on the merit of going through your schedule, then you would do that. But given that Clemson just lost to an unranked Notre Dame team, well, now they're ranked, but just lost to a Notre Dame team badly, really bad. Yeah, you also have to not only take the loss into effect that it's just the one loss, but the gigantic nature of that loss where they did not look at any point during that game like a team that should be in the discussion, and they're rightfully dropped down a little bit.
Should LSU be 7?
I think that's a little high. I think they should be ahead of Alabama, no doubt.
Okay.
But ahead of USC, I can see where the argument where USC, again, 1 loss, LSU has 2.
Because LSU's just 2 spots behind a team that beat the hell out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's my point with this. It will be interesting to see if, in fact, UT at home in Austin beats TCU this weekend. If that happens, whether it's a 5-point game or a 10-point game or it's a bang-bang field goal at the end of the game, whatever happens, it will be interesting to me to see what they do to TCU. And what I mean by that is that it would not surprise me if Texas beats TCU, if TCU goes pop, gone. Like maybe down to 10 with Clemson. And yet again, with LSU, they have the great win against Alabama. They lost to Florida State. That's propping them up, by the way, Florida State being at 23. Don't think that's not a part of the discussion. And yet they were drilled by Tennessee. Now, they got the big win against Alabama. And then you start thinking about Alabama. And I love Nick Saban. I love what they've done. And it's like, wow. Tell me their most quality win.
Tennessee's most quality win?
Alabama.
Alabama's most quality win? Texas.
Okay. All right. Was that considered when they beat Texas a quality win? And is Texas any different ranking-wise now than they were when Alabama beat them in Austin?
No. And this is, Alabama.
It's not me complaining about where Alabama is. It's just me. There's certain things I see that's just because I'm a little bit strange.
Well, and look, that's the argument for putting Clemson ahead of them, putting Ole Miss ahead of them, who they do play this week, putting UCLA ahead of them, because UCLA has quality wins on the schedule. And, so I know that they already had pushed LSU up a little bit so that Alabama would not drop that far. But the beneficiaries of this, and it's so weird to say, of LSU beating Alabama is not just LSU, it's Florida State. Because all of a sudden you go in like, well, they beat them early in the year.
Yeah.
If not for a fumble on the 1 yard, like it was a 1-point game. But if you really go into the thing, not for a fumble on the 1 yard line, might have beat them handily.
Now, Alabama's played a lot of ranked teams. They did beat Texas when they were unranked in Austin. It was a classic game. They then they beat Arkansas, who at the time was ranked 20th by 23 points. They did struggle to beat an unranked A&M team that did win the game. And then the losses are by 3 and also by 1 on bang-bang, last-second, end-of-the-game wins by Tennessee and LSU, both of them on the road. So those, I get that at number 6, and now LSU's already up to number 10, or is now ranked. At the time they were ranked number 10. So, and they have Ole Miss this week. And so, but it will be interesting to me that if, in fact, Texas beats TCU, and they're favored by, 5 or so, whatever the line is, where will TCU go if it's a 28-26 game? Well, it's a 34-30 game. Where will TCU drop compared to where they are now? And again, it's kind of we lost our minds last week. It's always the first when you're like, oh my God. But it starts to take care of itself and people get a chance to play each other. We'll see what happens.